Best 10 Horror Movies in Hollywood. Hi, today we are going to see the best 10 horror movies in Hollywood. 1. The Shining, 1980, directed by Stanley Kubrick and based on Stephen King's novel. This film follows a family as they become the winter caretakers of an isolated hotel, and the supernatural events that unfold. The Shining is a horror film about a family who becomes the winter caretakers of an isolated hotel, the Overlook Hotel. Jack Torrance, played by Jack Nicholson, is a writer who takes the job as the hotel's caretaker with his wife Wendy, played by Shelley Duvall, and their young son Danny, played by Danny Lloyd. As the family settles into the hotel, Danny starts experiencing psychic premonitions and visions of the hotel's dark past, including a series of murders that occurred years ago. As the winter progresses, Jack's mental state deteriorates, and he becomes increasingly violent and unstable, putting his family in danger. The family is ultimately trapped in the hotel, and they must fight for survival against the supernatural forces that haunt it. The film's eerie atmosphere, iconic scenes, and Jack Nicholson's memorable performance have made The Shining a classic in the horror genre. 2. The Exorcist, 1973, directed by William Friedkin and based on William Peter Blatty's novel. This film follows a young girl possessed by a demonic entity and the efforts to exorcise her. The Exorcist is a horror film about a young girl named Regan, played by Linda Blair, who becomes possessed by a demonic entity. Her mother, actress Chris McNeil, played by Ellen Burstyn, becomes increasingly desperate as Regan's behavior becomes increasingly erratic and disturbing. In an effort to help her daughter, Chris seeks the help of two priests, Father Karras, played by Jason Miller, and Father Marin, played by Max von Sydow, who attempt to perform an exorcism on Regan. The film is known for its intense and disturbing scenes of possession and exorcism, as well as its exploration of faith and the nature of evil. The Exorcist was a critical and commercial success, and it has since become a classic of the horror genre. 3. Psycho, 1960, directed by Alfred Hitchcock. This film follows a young woman who checks into a motel run by a disturbed young man, Norman Bates. Psycho is a horror film directed by Alfred Hitchcock and based on the novel by Robert Bloch. The film follows Marion Crane, played by Janet Leigh, a secretary who steals money from her employer and goes on the run. She stops at the isolated Bates Motel, where she meets the motel's owner, Norman Bates, played by Anthony Perkins. As the night progresses, Marion disappears, and her sister and boyfriend begin searching for her. The film builds tension as it becomes clear that Norman is hiding a dark secret and that Marion's fate may be more sinister than it first appeared. The film is famous for its iconic shower scene and twist ending, as well as its exploration of themes such as voyeurism and the nature of evil. Psycho was a critical and commercial success and has since become a classic of the horror genre. 4. The Silence of the Lambs, 1991, directed by Jonathan Demme and based on Thomas Harris novel. This film follows an FBI trainee who must seek the help of a convicted serial killer to catch another killer. The film follows FBI trainee Clarice Starling, played by Jodie Foster, as she is tasked with interviewing notorious serial killer Dr. Hannibal Lecter, played by Anthony Hopkins, in the hopes of obtaining information that will help solve a case involving another serial killer, Buffalo Bill, played by Ted Levine. As Clarice delves deeper into the case, she becomes increasingly entangled with both Lecter and Buffalo Bill, and she must race against time to save the life of Buffalo Bill's latest victim. The film is known for its tense and suspenseful atmosphere, as well as its iconic performances by Foster and Hopkins. It was a critical and commercial success, winning multiple Academy Awards, and it has since become a classic of the horror thriller genre. 5. Halloween, 1978, directed by John Carpenter. This film follows a young man who escapes from a mental institution and returns to his hometown to continue his killing spree. The film follows a young woman named Laurie Strode, played by Curtis, who is stalked by a masked killer named Michael Myers, played by Tony Moran, on Halloween night. As Laurie becomes increasingly terrified and isolated, she realizes that she must confront Michael Myers in order to survive. The film is known for its tense and suspenseful atmosphere, as well as its use of the final girl trope in horror films. Halloween was a critical and commercial success and has since become a classic of the horror genre. It spawned a franchise of sequels, reboots, and spin-offs, and Michael Myers has become one of the most iconic horror villains in cinema history. 6. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre, 1974, directed by Tobe Hooper. This film follows a group of friends who stumble upon a family of cannibals while on a road trip. The film follows a group of friends who are on a road trip to visit the grave of a relative when they encounter a family of cannibalistic and sadistic murderers in rural Texas. The group is hunted down by the chainsaw-wielding Leatherface, played by Gunnar Hansen, and his family, who torture and kill them one by one. The film is known for its graphic violence and intense, visceral atmosphere, as well as its iconic villain, Leatherface. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre was controversial upon its release and faced censorship and criticism for its depictions of violence. However, it has since become a classic of the horror genre and has influenced many subsequent films in the genre. 7. Rosemary's Baby, 1968, directed by Roman Polanski and based on Ira Levin's novel. This film follows a young couple who move into a new apartment and become involved with a satanic cult. Rosemary's Baby is a horror film directed by Roman Polanski and based on the novel by Ira Levin. The film follows a young couple, Rosemary, played by Mia Farrow, and Guy, played by John Cassavetes, who move into a new apartment in New York City. After becoming pregnant, Rosemary begins to suspect that her neighbors, a group of elderly Satanists, have sinister intentions for her unborn child. As her paranoia and fear grow, Rosemary becomes increasingly isolated and trapped, and she must fight for the safety of her child. The film is known for its psychological horror elements, as well as its exploration of themes such as motherhood and the supernatural. Rosemary's Baby was a critical and commercial success and has since become a classic of the horror genre. 8. A Nightmare on Elm Street, 1984, directed by Wes Craven. This film follows a group of teenagers who are stalked in their dreams by a disfigured man named Freddy Krueger. The film follows a group of teenagers who are haunted by a supernatural killer named Freddy Krueger, played by Robert Englund, in their dreams. As the teenagers struggle to stay awake and avoid falling asleep, they realize that their only hope for survival is to confront Freddy and find a way to defeat him in the dream world. The film is known for its inventive and surreal visual effects, as well as its iconic villain, Freddy Krueger. A Nightmare on Elm Street was a critical and commercial success and has since become a classic of the horror genre. It spawned a franchise of sequels, reboots, and spin-offs, and Freddy Krueger has become one of the most iconic horror villains in cinema history. 9. The Conjuring, 2013, directed by James Wan and based on true events. This film follows a family who moves into a haunted farmhouse and the paranormal investigators who come to help. The Conjuring is a supernatural horror film directed by James Wan and based on the real-life paranormal investigations of Ed and Lorraine Warren, played by Patrick Wilson and Vera Farmiga. The film follows the Warrens as they investigate a series of terrifying events at a rural farmhouse in Rhode Island. The family who lives in the house experiences strange and disturbing occurrences, including ghostly apparitions and possession by a malevolent entity. The Warrens use their expertise in demonology and paranormal activity to try to help the family and rid the house of the evil presence. The film is known for its use of suspense and jump scares, as well as its strong performances by Wilson and Farmiga. The Conjuring was a critical and commercial success and has since spawned a franchise of sequels, spin-offs, and related films. 10. Get Out, 2017, directed by Jordan Peele. This film follows a young black man who visits his white girlfriend's family and discovers a dark secret about them. The film follows a young African-American man named Chris, played by Daniel Kaluuya, who goes to visit the family of his white girlfriend Rose, played by Allison Williams, for the weekend. As the weekend progresses, Chris begins to suspect that something is very wrong with the seemingly friendly and welcoming family and their affluent suburban community. The film explores themes of racism and cultural appropriation, as well as psychological horror and suspense. Get Out was a critical and commercial success, earning praise for its social commentary and innovative approach to the horror genre. It won several awards, including an Academy Award for Best Original Screenplay for Peele. Thanks for watching my video.